One of the premises of today's service is that we are surrounded by abundance we don't notice, truths we let slip by. In the spirit of this, my dog and I did some research for this service. We took several short drives this week, mostly within a mile of the radius of my house in Martinez. Neil and I are going to share some observations. They are my observations. I did not give Neil only crystals. But they are, in fact, informed by what Crystal noticed that I might not have.
A young person pushing an oversized suitcase into the Safeway bathroom.
A skunk so fat as to be triangular, waddling across the road.
3 police officers surrounding a young male-presenting person and his car.
A bus stop.
A lean dog stopping to scratch its ear before a sign requesting donations.
A young couple pushing 3 suitcases down the sidewalk.
A person smiling and talking into a cell phone and laughing down the sidewalk.
Someone sleeping on the bench at the bus stop.
A person with tattoos bicycling in a slow arc as if waiting for someone.
Someone working out in their garage.
A baby carrier on an outside table at a fast food restaurant.
That bus stop that I always notice now.
The camper parked further down the road.
A person with head in hands on a wall behind a store.
Someone and a dog sleeping on a store lawn.
4 sheriff's deputies, vehicles in a parking lot.
An ambulance running a red light.
2 college students race walking and laughing together.
A baby holding court on an elder's lap through the window of a restaurant.
3 really big blackbirds on the roof of that bus stop. It would be so remiss of me not to take a moment to honor the work of Brett Carson for this service. I think I can safely say there are very few congregations that would be able to do this music in most places. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Yes, it was warm in Martinez last August as I sit with Bob Boster and Kathy Vale talking about the topic that they are presenting to me as the winner of last year's Serve You sermon idea. If I am sweating, it is not just because it is late afternoon and we are in an open air place. I muse as I hear more. Are we playing Stump the Minister here? Because it was definitely getting warmer and warmer. Because when someone tells you that they're interested in you doing a service about the music of John Cage, the more than experimental composer who is known for advancing the theory of indeterminacy in music, you can start to feel just a little bit suspicious, just a little bit paranoid. But by the end of the conversation, I am getting heated, but it's from excitement because my glancing encounter with why they chose this topic and another's musical knowledge and passion is so inspiring that it's given me a glimpse of a shy and evasive truth of which I want to see more. In the movie When Harry Met Sally, there's a conceit where couples are framed telling the story of how they met. And a couple of them tell these stories about a series of intentional actions which led to them coming together. But most of them tell stories about completely random things that happened, and that is how they got brought together. And their joy at the path that they've been given to them by luck, by chance, by this thing they couldn't control, is part of the charm of these scenes, hearing them one after another. The unexpected happens, and they have love. We delight in this. We find less delight in the obvious counterpart. Some people experience tragedy through the same random generation of events. We are living in a world which seems to be oddly shaped by chance encounters and strange glimpses, where it seems like the outcome of events is more tied to chance than it is to the efforts sometimes that we make or the things that we do. We are constantly surprised in these days by the unexpected. Much of it is not the unexpected that we want. These glimpses, these glances, these random encounters can mean a lot to us if we take the time to see them for what they are. Now, far be it from me not to be one to rise to a challenge. I have spent quite a lot of time, actually, listening to John Cage's music. And at first, I will have to admit, it seemed a lot to me sort of like those phone messages you get when someone butt dials you. Just saying. I'm being honest here. But I do also have to say that I have come to appreciate its odd and soothing qualities over time and repetition. And I found myself in the last couple days, as I was preparing for this sermon, seeking out certain pieces, especially the ones that Brett had told me that he was going to play. The quality of listening it requires and what comes of paying attention to that which we often don't pay attention to is truly remarkable. And it was transformational for me in preparing. Perhaps you have heard about the butterfly effect. This is a term coined by Edward Lorenz that minor perturbations, such as the beating of a butterfly's wings, can affect much bigger phenomenon, such as the time and location of tornadoes. It's the idea that what can seem random and discordant may actually be the cause of some larger rhythms, melodies, or patterns. John Cage's theory of indeterminacy is a bit like that. He set out to intentionally to design music in which random events could and would affect the pieces. And by the way, we know that anytime we hear live music, that is always a possibility, right? Those of us that have done that performing. The butterfly effect, indeterminacy, glancing encounters, they all speak of a certain lack of control which many of us find quite unsettling. They fly in the face of what has been until recently the predominant form of thinking, illustrated best perhaps by the great man theory of history. This is the idea that the course of the world has actually been set by heroic figures who have single-handedly wrested truth from ignorance and progress from the feckless. I've waited a long time to use the word feckless in a sermon. It's another reason I'm grateful for Bob and Kathy. But really, let's be honest about it. This is the kind of leadership we like, right? It's bold, it's definitive, it's intentional, it's in control. Except Cage and the times we're living in might whisper to us when it's not. And we are living in an age which suggests that we may be facing a new paradigm. Expect the unexpected, today's world seems to advise, and know that the costs of it are being borne by many who feel vulnerable, or unmoored, or unsure, or despairing. One of the things that was unexpected for me this year was that for the first time in many years, because of the presence of Reverend Neil Anderson as our second full-time minister in this busy community, I actually attended some of the Serve-You items that I purchased. This has not happened in years. I'm like the ghost presence of, different donations. And each one I have been able to make this year, and I've made almost all of them, has been like an encounter, one of those glancing encounters with some aspect of a member that has been incredibly joyful to witness. And I'm going to ask, I've got a couple slides I'm going to ask get put up here. One of the great joys was a trip with Don and Kathy Carnes. Are Don and Kathy here today? I don't know if they are, but Don and Cafe Carnes to see the giant paneled mural commonly known as Pan-American Unity. We've got a couple images of it here. It was painted by Diego Rivera. It's an almost perfect metaphor for these times in which we're in. In this amazing and huge work, which is, by the way, about to pay a visit to SF MoMA, Diego has found a place to put a diversity of great men, including Thomas Jefferson, Henry Ford, Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, just to name a few, interspersed with people that you would not recognize, you would not know, including Diego's partner, who now we would know, Frida Kahlo, but we wouldn't have known then, his assistants, and even a friend's young child who, in a turn of the unexpected, turns out to be one of our members. In fact, Don Carnes as a young boy. If you do not know that story, you'll want to know more. Ask them the next time you see them. Diego's painting, like Cage's music, like the choreography of Merce Cunningham, who was a collaborator of Cage's, points to a much more nuanced and slippery set of truths. That life is more complicated, more tragic, more rich, more joyful, more perplexing than we thought. In the year 2018, which comes after the years 2016 and 2017, in case you didn't notice, this should not be surprising. We keep reaching back and reaching back, hoping that if we just keep reaching, we're going to be able to return to that great man vision of what it means to be a society. It may have passed, my friends. It may have passed. In this time, if we listen to the silences, the gaps, the random sounds, we may be more sensitive than usual to the kindness or unkindness of strangers, to the indifference or noticing of people we don't know. Some of that hostility for some of us may be almost unbearable in this bully nation in which we are living. The unpredictable may be harder for us to embrace, and the unexpected joys may pass beyond us if we do not see them. This is what we are here to learn, and perhaps we need Cage's lessons even more than ever, even though some of them are hard to hold. Last Monday, I'd like to ask for a picture of the bus stop again. Yeah. Last Monday, I made an early trip to Walnut Creek. Monday's my day off. I actually try not to come here if I can. But I had some things I needed to attend to, and I had that horrible realization that maybe some of you have had before, that I left the cord to my laptop in the office. So I was up early and on the road before 6 a.m. And as I was passing the bus stop, which is just a few blocks from my house, I happened to look across the street and see a woman kneeling down by the body of a man who was sprawled half under the bench. She was taking his pulse while another woman was pacing on her cell phone, frantically trying to reach someone. Perhaps on their way to work, these two women had come across this at the bus stop. The parking lot behind this bus stop over here on the right is frequented by a crowd of folks without homes, many of whom are addicted or mentally ill, and many a night on my way home, and it has been growing over recent years. I have to wait through an extra cycle of light for one of them to remember to get out of the street, sometimes 2 cycles. And though I was several lanes away, I rolled down my window to hear the kneeling woman bark, "Tell them I think he has died." I could hear the sirens coming behind me. Stunned, I drove on to work, and by the time I came back with my power cord on the seat beside me, the bus stop was empty. Within the course of silence, John Cage reminds us, there is much to hear. And all week I have been hearing what it means to live in a world where this is not an uncommon thing for us to find in our neighborhoods in the Bay Area. What it means to live in a world where some see so little hope they turn to such devastating practices, where we have allowed housing to become a luxury rather than a right, and where young people are falling victim to so many different kinds of death. And we often go about our days. Because I happened to forget that chord, I witnessed this moment, and it let loose the butterfly wings in my heart. Sometimes it is not what we study and approach with intention. Sometimes it is what comes into a path that shapes the course of our days. This seems to be one of those times. And we can feel ourselves struggling as we find and need to find both hope and grief among the randomness. Writer Rebecca Solnit observes, "It's important to say what hope is not. It is not the belief that everything was, is, or will be fine. The evidence is all around us of tremendous suffering and tremendous destruction. The hope," she says, "I'm interested in is about a broad perspective with specific possibilities, ones that invite or demand that we act. It's also not a sunny, everything is getting better narrative," she continues, "though it may be a counter to the everything is getting worse narrative. You could call it an example and an account of complexities and uncertainties with openings." And she goes on to say, "We need a vision or a dream big enough to let hope and grief coexist." Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, early on described the movement's mission as provide hope and inspiration for collective action to build collective power to achieve collective transformation and root it, Patrisse says, in grief and rage, but point it towards vision and dreams. Somewhere in all that swirl, all of that is present, and we need to listen for these new kinds of truth and to engage in this new way of paying attention. If I hadn't been noticing this week, because I had to do this service about John Cage, I might not have also seen the people laughing in the windows or the joy of that couple race walking down the sidewalk. I might not have noticed how much my canine companion notices that I would never notice. I might not have spent a great deal of this week grieving and honoring the humanity of whoever it was who died before dawn on the streets of Pacheco last Monday, and we might not together have had a moment to recognize that person's worth and dignity. For I know all too well that those who loved him best may not yet or ever know of where and how he died. This knowing, like John Cage's music, is not easy to embrace. The large heroic moments of the history books of my childhood still seem to beckon. History told, though, through a narrow lens of race and gender and privilege makes us more comfortable because it's more sure. We long to have and be that kind of leader, leading in a clear time of prophecy and prosperity and good. And yet how much more it is a gift when we offer our leadership to meet whatever is put before us, and doing so with faithfulness and honor as well. It is like singing a beloved hymn in another language or hearing a piano played upon its string and case. In the lapse of 4 minutes and 33 seconds, we might hear a truth from our own lives revealed through the bravery of a woman who told her story in front of a bank of stony-faced, powerful men. We might hear the despair that underlies those who believe that the salvation of the world might depend on the vulnerability, the invulnerability of the great men. We might witness the butterfly wings of individuals casting their votes next month or registering to vote by tomorrow, or donating to bring a new, talented, prophetic leader into our justice ministry. We might understand that every person whose life brushes up against ours can be helped or harmed by a glancing encounter with us and us with them. So let us listen to the richness of the silences. Let us be the rainbow in someone else's cloud. Let us here find hope in the forms we may not yet recognize. Let us remember that the course of our lives is not determined, that some of what is before us will be of our making, and some of it will be of just our being and our presence to what is given to us. We may wish with all our heart to live in a different, clearer, more heroic world. And yet what lies before us is to live in the one that we're given. The beating of the butterfly's wings may yet change the course of the world or change the course of our lives. The beating of our own hearts may allow love and truth to blossom again. And so I close this sermon with the words of the prophet John Cage, who said, everything we do is music.